ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ।
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀਓ। ਫਰੀਦਾ ਕਾਲੇ ਮਹਿੰਡੇ ਕੱਪੜੇ, ਕਾਲਾ ਮਹਿੰਡਾ ਵੇਸ, ਗੁਨਹੀ ਭਰਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਫਿਰਾਂ, ਲੋਕ ਕਹੈਂ ਦਰਵੇਸ। ਤੂੰ ਦਰਿਆਓ ਦਾਨਾ ਬੀਨਾ, ਮੈਂ ਮਛਲੀ ਕੈਸੇ ਅੰਤ ਲਹਾਂ। ਜਹ ਜਹ ਦੇਖਾਂ ਤਹ ਤਹ ਤੂੰ ਹੈ, ਤੁਝ ਤੇ ਨਿਕਸੀ ਫੂਟ ਮਰਾਂ। ਬ੍ਰਹਮ ਪੇਖੀਐ ਬ੍ਰਹਮ ਸੁਣੀਐ, ਏਕ ਏਕ ਵਖਾਣੀਐ। ਹਮਰੀ ਗਣਤ ਨਾ ਗਣੀਆਂ ਕਾਈ, ਆਪਣਾ ਬਿਰਦ ਪਛਾਣ। ਹਾਥ ਦੇ ਰਾਖੈ ਕਰ ਆਪਣੇ, ਸਦਾ ਸਦਾ ਰੰਗ ਮਾਣ। ਸਾਚਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸਦ ਮਿਹਰਬਾਨ, ਬੰਦ ਪਾਇਆ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਪੂਰੈ। ਹੋਈ ਸਰਬ ਕਲਿਆਣ, ਜਿਉ ਪਾਏ ਪਿੰਡ ਜਿਨ ਸਾਜਿਆ, ਦਿੱਤਾ ਪਹਿਨਣ ਖਾਣ। ਆਪਣੇ ਦਾਸ ਕੀ ਆਪ ਪੈਜ ਰਾਖੀ, ਨਾਨਕ ਸਦ ਕੁਰਬਾਨ। ਡੰਡੌਤ ਬੰਧਨ ਅਨਕ ਬਾਰ, ਸਰਬ ਕਲਾ ਸਮਰੱਥ। ਡੋਲਨ ਤੇ ਰਾਖੋ ਪ੍ਰਭੂ, ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇ ਕਰ ਹੱਥ। ਡੋਲਨ ਤੇ ਰਾਖੋ ਪ੍ਰਭੂ, ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇ ਕਰ ਹੱਥ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। Quick recap from last week. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ 6 ਦਿਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਏ, those of you that haven't been here for the last 6 days, let me just tell you something about consistency. Hana? His reason being today, like I said at the beginning, just coming right away, jumping into a middle of a course, it's very difficult to grasp what has already been discussed because some things you're expected to know sometimes. Okay? That's why let me tell you something about consistency before we begin. Sant Baba Kartar Singh Ji and Sant Baba Gurbachan Singh Ji, the Mukhis of Damdami Taksal, they were sitting on top of Akal Takht one day. While sitting on top of Akal Takht, Sant Gyani Gurbachan Singh Ji turned towards Sant Baba Kartar Singh and they said, "Tu das, tu ek kam karna ja 100 kam karne hai? Do you want to do 100 things or do you want to do just one thing? What do you want to focus on? How much do you want to do?" And Sant Gyani Kartar Singh, they said, "Baba ji ek kam karna hai." Then Gyani ji turned around and said, "Then iddan kar, become the Jathedar of Taksal." They made them the Jathedar of Taksal because they said they want to do one thing, they want to have one focus. If you go towards going to 100 focuses, you will exert all your energy, but you won't be able to get much done. Therefore, if you take one focus everything towards that one goal, you can actually push that one goal forward and actually do something. If you just become what somebody pulls you this way, somebody else pulls you this way, then it's not going to work. You have to make yourself determined towards reaching your goals. That being said, I'm going to do a quick recap. We obviously can't explain the last 6 days again and again, because we have to move forward. ठीक है? तां करके, just a quick recap, and then after we're going to go in. ठीक है जी? So my first question to you guys is, tell me the Swarup of Akal Purkh. Swarup of Paramatma, Hanji. Sat Chit Ananda Swarup. Theek hai ji. Tell me now tell me the analogy from Suraj Prakash of how Pai Daya Singh describes karmas. How many forms did Pai Daya Singh describe? 3 types. Okay, and what analogy did he use? Bow and arrow. So what was the first type? Sanchit karma. Okay? The ones that are inside the quiver. Ones you haven't used yet. Second, the ones that are in your hand on the bow. The arrow is in your hand, you're about to shoot the arrow. That is what? You're about to shoot that arrow. That's the second type. Third is when you've shot that arrow. When the arrow is shot, it's not within your hands anymore. But before, then the first one you had, but you hadn't used them. And you weren't doing anything with them at that moment. The second one, it was in the moment. You are using that karam. It's within your hands which way you want to aim or not. Do you want to aim it towards the right, or do you want to aim it towards the left? Once you've shot the arrow, no matter if you change your mind after and say, I want to change my mind from going from left to right, you won't be able to stop it because that arrow is going to go and hit something. And you're going to have to get the reaction of that, if that makes sense. Got it? So those three types of things were described by Daya Singh in Surya Prakash Granth, which are there. Now, my next question to you guys is, tell me what is a doubt. Anji. Param ki hunda. Not translate. When I say tell me what it means, it doesn't mean tell me the translation of it. ठीक है? ਉਹਦੇ अर्थ ਕੀ ਨੇ? Huh. So I described to you guys param being when a lion looks at a what? A well that's filled with water. It looks into that well and it looks back. And what does it see? It gets filled with ankar that there's another lion inside of my territory. The lion looks, sees another lion and says that I want to fight you. I want to scare you. I want to tell you to go. So he roars. The sound hits the water and bounces back. It hears itself. And it thinks that the lion also roared back because the other lion that he's looking at is also opening his mouth. So he thinks the lion wants to fight him now. So what does the lion do? Gets even more angry and jumps into the well. And he dies. So he died inside of his own param. But the reality was that lion was just him. He thought he saw two, but there was only one. You might see two different people in this world. You might see 7 billion people in this world. The reality is just one. Samjagi? Is everybody following me on that? If that didn't make sense to you, then you'll have to go back and you have to ask and go through what the things that we discussed in the last 6 days. There's not two, there's only one. There's a bimb and a pratibimb. Somebody tell me the arths of that. Bimb ki hunda, te pratibimb ki hunda. Hanji? Hanji. So bimb is the actual form that's in front of the mirror. Pratibimb is the reflection that's coming from the mirror. Does that make sense? ठीक है. Now, I want you to describe to me when Akal Purkh, Brahm Swarup Paramatma, which you described to me is just right now as Sat Chit Anand Swarup. When that Sat Chit Anand Swarup Paramatma had a khayal, what was that khayal or what was that thought known as? I told you the arth, now you tell me the actual term for that. That thought that came out of the complete Sat, the truth, Chit, Chetan Swarup, aware, Ananda Swarup, the blissful being. That khyal came because Akal Purkh is beyond khyal. They don't think, but they are aware. There's no actual thought. But as soon as a khyal came, that separated into two, that is known as Maya. Do you get? This should be in your guys' notes. Maya was put into 3 forms. Now this is, I'm going to continue and I'm going forward now. Okay? Is everybody with me so far? Maya took 3 forms. What were those 3 forms of Maya? Which, this is actually a part of the recap. That's what you're looking in your book. You've heard these terms before, Rajo Tamo Sato. Okay? Now I want you to tell me the 3 things. First, we discussed Tat Tavang and Is, correct? I'm going to tell you today how Tat Tavang and Is came to be. So, first, there is Maya. Then there's Rajo Tamo Sato. what are the artha of Rajo, Tamo, Sato? In the Sankhep form, the very brief form we spoke about. So 3 types of guna. Tamo is just means nakhedikam, very bad deeds, which kam, lust, and all those things fall under. Rajo would fall into Raj, kingdoms, power. Sato is all good deeds, charitable deeds, compassion, all these things, but it's still all within Maya. And how does that work? Now, those things, one form, Maya split itself into 2 forms now. Does that make sense? Is everybody following me? Maya itself, first, it's 3 forms, but those 3 forms itself, they went into 2 different forms of what we call Ishwar, or what we call Maya. One of those forms became known as Ishwar. So now, what did I say Tat, Tav, and Is means? What are the arth of that? Tat, Tavang, and Is. Let's quickly go over that. Is referring to Brahm, or Par Brahm, Akal Purkh. Tat is what? Arya Chitte Kush? Hanji? Hanji, Tat is Ishwar. And Tavang is the Jeev. ठीक है? I want you to keep in mind right now that all of Maya is Jad Roop. Does that make sense? Jad Roop. Samjari? Jad meaning something that does not move. You have feet, you can walk around. A tree has a jad, it has roots, it cannot move around, it cannot walk around. Maya does not move. The illusion does not move. And within that illusion, Akal Purkh is the one that's moving and everything. So now when Sato Gun, Sato, went into one form, that became known as Ishwar. When Maya pulled it into one form. Maya pulled the Sato into one form, and that turned into what we call Ishwar. And I'll describe to you what Ishwar is in a bit. You should be writing this down, just because then the Tamo and the Rajo, when they were captivated in one form of Maya, you got it written down? लिख लिया? ठीक है. उसनु कह दिंदे आ जीव रूप. The Brahm Swarup, the Hai Brahm Swarup. Brahm is Sat Chit Anand. We discussed this before in a previous day. Now, os cheez vichon, out of that, the question is, what is Ishwar? Ishwar, for example, when it came captivated by Maya, but it still had good deeds, thoughts and everything, it got ahankar that it still hadn't fully forgotten the separation from Akal Purkh. So the whole separation is the Atma coming away from the Paramatma through this illusion which we call the doubt, which is looking at the Pratibimb or the mirror, but it is thinking that it is something else, Parayaya, but it's actually itself. So it has not completely forgotten. Jide Jeevya, that has completely forgotten. Does that make sense? Jeev has completely forgotten. Ishwar has not completely forgotten. But it still had qualities. Therefore, because of that quality, because there was a little bit of jnana and not a lot of jnana, not complete jnana, which I described to you as well. There was a rope in the middle of the road, and somebody walking by looks at it. There's a little bit of jnana, but not complete jnana. So that person got fear that I don't know if it's a snake or I don't know if it's a rope. There became 2 thoughts. The person was indecisive, whether to continue or not. And in that param, in that doubt, that Ishwar became Ankari. So ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਅਹੰਕਾਰ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ. That I am the greatest. ਸਮਝ ਆ ਗਈ? So ਉਸ ਈਸ਼ਵਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਉਹ ਅਹੰਕਾਰ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ. Then the other jeev, they were just stuck in between the actual, the tamo and the rajo anyway. The alarm's going off. Does that make sense? ठीक है? Now I want to express to you one more thing here about Ishwar. Ishwar has 3 forms. We discussed these three forms already. But I didn't quite make it clear to you what are they the three forms of. The three forms which I taught you are Karan, Asthul, and Suksham. These three forms of Ishwar. But ede vichon, we have to discuss what came first and what came after. How were these three forms created? We discussed what these three forms are, which I'm just going to ask you now, right? But how did they come to be? Where did they fit into this place? Does that make sense to everybody? What is Karan? The Karan Sarir, wo ki cheez hai? Karan is the cause. So as soon as the separation happened, the avidya was there. You can translate to agyan or avidya. Karan equals avidya or agyan. When that agyan came, when that duality came, then the Karan Sarir was formed right away. There's no ands, if, doubts. Karan Sarir is created, but now within that, and we discussed one more thing which I'm just going to ask you now as well. I want you to describe to me Panchikrit, because this is going to fit into here. Je country ye cheezaं nahi kitiyan, that's not good. Then this means there's no consistency. ठीक है, सारियां चीज़ां कंठ, meaning memorized, inside and out. Describe to me what is Panchikrit. Panchikrit, let me give you a hint. 5 elements. Go. Okay, now how do those 5 elements, those 5 tat, how did they come to be Panchikrit? So they took half of the tat was taken, 50% was kept within the base of that tat, then the other 4 parts of that tat or that element were given off and swapped with each other. Does that make sense? Swapped it with each other, and therefore when one tat was 50%, its main base, its original element, but it was combined together with other elements, that came known as what? Panchikrit. And there's only one that can actually do this. That is Akal Purkh. Only Akal Purkh has the power to create that. We can take different elements, put them together on a molecular level even, but we cannot actually take the actual element and actually combine it and mix it in with 5. So each of what we call the Asthul Sarir is made up of the Panchikrit. And the Suksham and the Asthul are both made up of this. Does that make sense to everybody? Samjhagi? Not going too fast? ਜਦੋਂ Panchikrit aa gaya. So now let's speak about how first the Karan came. Karan was created because of the doubt was created. Doubt was created, and because of the doubt, then when there was Ishwar and there was the Jeev, there was Jad Roop, meaning a dead Sroop, meaning non-movement. Inside of that, there was the Suksham that was put. Does that make sense? The makeup of the Suksham, which we discussed as Man, Chit, Buddh, Ankar, Panch Gyan Indre, Panch Karm Indre, and 2 more that we'll get into after, that all equals 17 different things. Your Suksham Sarir is made up of 17 different things, 17 different tats. Because I'm not saying the other 2 because I don't want it to get too confusing yet. The Suksham is created. Inside of that, that is what your mind is. That is what you were the one thinking. Now with those Gyan Indra and those Karma Indra, I'm going to add in another concept here. Okay? These ones you have to remember. Remember what we talked about, the 5 senses, right? We spoke about that. The only reason why your Suksham would be knowing what's happening in this tool is because of these 5 senses. I'm going to expand more onto that now. Right? So, Shabd, Spars, Roop, Ras, Gandh. Memorize that. Shabd, Spars, Roop, Ras, Gandh. Shabd, Spars, Roop, Ras, Gandh. But that is not just referring to the external Gyan Indri. These are the qualities which are taken in. So these are actually Suksham qualities. Shabd, Spars, Roop, Ras, Gandh. Does that make sense? These are not physical. Let's move away from the physical. Let's speak about the suksham now. Samjh aa gayi? Physical, okay, let me just clarify in this case. Suksham means non-physical, meaning the subtle, the one that actually you can't actually grab and touch. But the asthul is physical. So your sarir, physical asthul sarir is this body, de roop. Samjh aa gayi? Theek hai. Now let's just translate those. Shabad, sound. ठीक है? Spars, meaning touching. Roop, you're looking. Vision. Ras, meaning taste. Gandh, meaning smell. Shabad, Spars, Roop, Ras, Gandh. Now let me explain to you how this works. There's a concept called Dhyan, Dhyata, Te, and Gyan, Gyata, Ge. Those 6 things you have to remember. They go with each other. So it's like a chart, a flow chart. So in each of these elements, there's something that's happening. So I'm focusing my dhyan on something. Dhyan is a big concept in itself. But let's just look at the actual word. Dhyan. So I'm focusing my what on you? My dhyan. Okay? But the thing that I'm focusing my dhyan on is called the te. So if I look, for example, if I look at that clock right there, the clock is there, that is the te. I'm focusing my dhyan, and the thing that's focusing that dhyan in itself on the inside, that is called the tyata, which would be my mind. My mind, my man is dhyaning or focusing on that clock. So dhyan, so te, dhyan and tyata, or dhyan, tyata, te. You, tell me your name. Hanji. Amar. Amrit Singh. Oh, Amrit Singh just told me something, right? So what he just told me is the ge, or the gyan, right? You are the ge because you are telling me the gyan. Does that make sense? So the gyan is coming, and who is receiving the gyan? The gyata. So now I'm telling you something. There's gyan coming out. I would be the ge, the gyan, and your mind is the gyata. Very simple. ਇਹ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਖੁੱਲਣੀਆਂ ਆ. Reason why you understand this concept now, ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ, when you guys start learning into the concept of what does actual tyona mean and what does actual gyan mean. How is gyan delivered back and forth? How does your mind take in gyan, and how does your mind deliver gyan inside and out? Then all of these things come together, and then when you read in Gurbani that day and night, Tya, Akal Purkh, ਉਹ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਧਿਆ, ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਅਰਥ ਉਦੋਂ ਖੁੱਲ੍ਹਦੇ ਆ. It opens up all to you then. It's not a literal translation where it just says remembering underneath, because remembering is not theona. It's something completely different. There's a big, deep concept behind that. Tai Maharaj ne shabd varte hai, and gyan in itself. ठीक है? ये सारियां चीज़ां लिख लो. ज्ञान ज्ञाता गे ध्यान ध्याता ते. हो गया कंठ? पढ़ लिया? ठीक है. ध्यान ध्याता ते ज्ञान ज्ञाता गे. So now we're speaking about the Sukham Asthul, and we spoke slightly about the Karan. ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੂਖਸ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਧਿਆਨ ਧਾਤਾ ਤੇ ਗਿਆਨ ਗਿਆਤਾ ਗੇ coming in and out with the Asthul. ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਅਸਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੜ ਰੂਪ ਆ. Does that make sense? Meaning non-movement, or the non-life in itself as well. So avidya karke, because of the avidya, there is the non-realization. We spoke about vairag as well. Sab to pehla je vairag paida hove, only with virag can you actually even continue to understand that realization. First type of virag is just realizing there is separated. That in itself is going to the state one state of Maya. That one state of Maya is when you're going from Jeev to Ishwar. Or Ishwar in itself isn't actually referring to the human. Ishwar ide vich vasdaya. So Ishwar is the power of Akal Purkh, is the power of Maya, but it's not Brahm Swarup. Kyunki ਉਹ ਵੀ ਮਾਇਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਤੋ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਈਸ਼ਵਰ ਬਣਿਆ. Only from Sato is created the Ishwar. So then we're going to go back to, let's jump straight back out and let's go back to Tat, Tavang and Is. ठीक है? Tat हो गया, Tavang हो गया, the Is हो गया. This main thing, if you wrap your head around this, it'll actually make sense when understanding what Maya is, because Maya, like I said, is not just referring to money. Anything that is pulling you towards the non-remembrance or I shouldn't say remembrance, because even remembering actually just means leen ho jana. If you go into the depths of that arth, completely leen ho jana, when there is nothing else there, when you actually go and you become that Ananda Swarup, Sat Chit Ananda Swarup, so the non-movement. Tat, Tavang and Is. So Ishwar, Jeev and Brahm or Par Brahm. You know apa keh denne hai. So I'm not going to continue too much on that side of things now. Let's take a step back now. ठीक है? Because I don't want to start saying too many concepts right now. Je ek antani hoiyan, then there's no point in moving forward. Right? You have to, it's difficult with that many students. Normally, if there's one-on-one, you can actually explain and make sure that the concept is understood. Does that make sense? So let's back up, and I want you guys to tell me the whole artha vairag now, again. Vairag ki si? We spoke about 3 types of vairag. Asal vairag, o cheez hai, or even vairag, jadon thanu all of the wealth, the ras, the money, the anand of Brahmpuri, Shivpuri and Bishanpuri, meaning everything that can possibly be there. No matter what there is, everything, all the wealth, all the beauties, everything comes in front of you and you consider it to be even less than human waste. When it equals less to you, when it means less to you than human waste, only then and then you have understood what vairag is. Because then you don't consider anything to be greater than Akal Purkh, because then you have realized what the asal de vich, what is the Maya Roop, what is the Brahm Swarup. ठीक है? And we went into the very first Shabad of Sirirag to understand that. Sirirag, even separation, or crying out in that pain or crying out in that love. Moti ta mundar usre, ratni ta hoy jada, kastur kungu agar chandran leep aave, chao mat dekh pula visre, tera chitna aave now. Je sare rasvi hon, all those things, even if you have armies after, Maharaj describes, even if you have Siddh Homa Riddhapai, even if you have all of that, Riddhiya, Siddhiya, all these energies, all of that still comes into the same thing, which might be called the Sato or the Rajo. That actually falls under the Rajo. But that concept in itself we'll keep to one side and we'll go into depth. Many things, even you can find online, they go into these concepts much more of how the Trigun works and what is Chauthapad and all of that kind of stuff. We're going to put that to one side now. Now let's go back to the whole thing about taking that step from your state of mind and realizing and moving forward. So first comes Vairag. Through Vairag comes what? Vivek. Vivek is the understanding of what is Sach and what is Jhoot. taking the two and becoming one. Now you're going to understand what Vivek means more. Because now we spoke about Tat, Tavang and Ish. We spoke about Raja, Tamo, Sato. We spoke all these things. What are they? They're more than one. Right? And if we link those three or those many forms back up, what do they link back to? They link back to only two things, or actually one thing in itself. And that one thing is Maya, right? That one thing is Maya, but the Maya is a khyal of something. And then when you connect back to the Bimb and the Pratibimb, the Maya actually doesn't even exist. The Maya actually isn't even there, because you realize that one, or there's only one, there's not two. So what is there? There's only the one lion looking at the mirror. There's no such thing as two lions. If you think there's two lions, there is a trickery, there's a story that normally is said with the same sort of thing as well. There's a rabbit and a lion. The rabbit is very sneaky. The rabbit is able to kill the lion, even though the lion comes to try to eat the rabbit. The lion comes running and he captures the rabbit and he's about to eat him. But the rabbit, using his trickery, he starts tricking the lion. He starts tricking the lion, and he's the one that puts that param inside of the lion. First, the lion did not know that there was two lions. It thought he was the only lion. But it was taught that with the rabbit saying that, look, there is another lion here. What is that other lion? He's like, look, just go look over there. What did the lion do? Same story. He goes and he looks into that thing and he says, there's another lion here. The rabbit again tells him that it wants to take over your land. Ankar paida kar dita. Because it was fed into the mind. If you go back into even your sopan avastha, your jagrata avastha, or your sukopat avastha, all of those states of mind in itself, if there is nothing coming into the suksham, if there's nothing coming into the mind, if there is no ge, or if there's no te for the gyata or the tyata to receive, then there would be no gyan or dhyan. Does that make sense? Because those the only work if all three of those things are there. If te and ge are there, only then can gyan and dhyan be there. And they can only gyan and dhyan can only be there if the gyata and the tyata are there. So if the lion is looking, he looks and the rabbit says there is one. Then he says that you should fight it. And what does it do? It jumps and it kills itself, meaning it has completely lost itself. Now it cannot even realize that there was only one lion, because it's completely lost into it now. It lost in itself. It killed itself within its own param and within its own maya. So now to simplify this, if I was to say this all in one line, it comes down very easily to saying, forget everything physical, right? Forget everything that are coming to you through those five senses, and focus on something that is not coming to you through those five senses. But eventually when you realize that there is the one that through those five senses, Shabad Sarup, Shabad Sapar Sarup Ras Gandh, all of those will become that one. फिर थानू दसदा ही होगा सब घट बोल राम बोला राम बना नहीं बोला रे. So even sound in itself, you won't hear anybody else speaking, you will only hear what? The one speaking throughout everything. And that is true removing that's what it means to remove the gyan. When you don't see 10 people, when you don't see 7 billion people, you only see one. And those two terms that we spoke about before, there's something called gyan and bigyan, something called paroksh and aparoksh. One thing is knowing this, having the knowledge of it, and one thing is actually reaching that avastha and actually being able to take that all in. Does that make sense, sort of? TK, I'm going to jump into another concept now. Well, I'll go more into it tomorrow, but I want you to connect this to the 5 names of the Panchapyare. Very simple. Names that you know. I want you to connect this concept to I'm going to ask you, how does this connect to the name of the Panchapyare? The first is Daya, Taram, Himmat, Mokham, and Sahib. Explain to me, now knowing this, explain to me what those names mean. Okay, you translated it to compassion. What does that compassion mean? Only through compassion, only through daya, can you actually let down a guard and be able to see the non-fault within somebody else. Okay? Being able to see faults in organs. Does that make sense? If you see a fault in a Vishay Vikar or an organ, then you realize that this organ is not the way to go. There is a little bit of park between Sach and Toot, if that makes sense. You're able to understand what is right and what is wrong. So with Kam or Krodh or with Irkha, if you are able to actually see the actual fault within it, then you are starting to move towards that path slightly. लिख लिया सारा, right? Keep that in mind. ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹੀ ਸਾਰਾ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਆ. If you are taking your mind and not putting it towards daya, and you're not moving towards an organ thought, towards a positive thought, then you won't be able to move forward with anything, right? Even though, like for example, a snake, when it goes, it opens its hood, the cobra does, and then it attacks to show what? Show its power, to show its way, to show its nature, to do what it has to do. Even though a mother of an animal or a bear loves its children, there's so much compassion, and it goes and it means no harm, but it will still snarl, it will still growl, it will start do anything. Reason being, because it has to live towards its nature. So this is where you separate the actual asthul. There's a separation between the asthul and the suksham, but they're actually in the ultimate world there is none. So we spoke about these things in the first day. I want you to list to me now the 10 nishaniya, which again we're going through like I don't know how many times now. The 10 nishaniya of a dharmi person. Khema. Khema, forgiveness. Ahimsa. Khema, ahimsa, daya, mrid. Sat bachan, tap dan. Seal, soch, and trishna bina. 10 nishaniya. Out of that, daya is one of them. If you are able to let down your guard of your ankar and start moving towards that, only through daya can you actually move away from seeing that param. Because it just all is a param in itself. Even that daya in itself is just still a form of Ishwar, is still a form of Maya. ठीक है? So that in itself is still not, if you become the most compassionate person in the world, you still have not found God. You found nothing. You've just become a compassionate person. Right? You do as much charity as you want, you've become a dayavan person. But yet you've reached step 1. Got it? Because halle vi naam nahi paya. We haven't even started talking about naam yet. Naam di the gal halle ਕੀਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ. So out of that, the daya aa gayi. Then with the daya, let's say you've let down your guard, there comes dharm. That bear will still growl. That bear will do everything it needs to do to protect its children. But now all of these qualities of which we call dharm, which we call farz, which we call everything we discussed on the very first day, all of those come into play. We spoke about the 10 qualities. We spoke about how dharm is grown, how dharm is nash, how it's grown, how it's destroyed, what kind of things that you want to implement into yourself to move towards a more dharmi lifestyle, to what is the actual art of dharm in itself. Farz, hukum, niyam. Understanding that niyam and living everything according to that. But that can only be done if you've actually fully recognized what the truth and false is. If you call yourself dharmi and doing something which you believe is right, but you are still indecisive and you're still in param, then that is a sign that you actually haven't reached that yet. Samjh aa gayi? Daya. Dharm, then the next Singh's name, which Maharaj named the Khalsa Panth, which is Himmat. So now Maharaj is transferring from the actual quality of the Asthul, the Suksham into the Asthul. But now I want you to just keep in mind here, that I want you to, instead of focusing on the physical of this, just focus on the non-physical of this for now, if that makes sense. Okay? Without the urge or without the himmat, without the realization, there cannot be any detachment. You cannot be steady or mokam. You cannot be firm, where it says digana dola drir kar rahe ho. You'll still be shaking if there is no such thing as himmat going towards it, if there is no pain felt. This is going to connect into your whole philosophy of vairag and vivek, which we spoke about. Je dard hi nahi hega, then there is no way that you'll be able to separate. If you are going towards the sukhi, because these are the qualities that we talked about, the unworthy student, what are they? Sukhi vyadi alasi kamat rasak bohsoe. If you are sukhi, I'm going to elaborate on this now, because this is going to get into a slight topic of sukh and dukh. If you are sukhi within the world and you think you already have everything, you are enjoying life, if you don't see a problem, then there is a big problem. Right? If you don't see a problem, there is a big problem. If you have no goal or mission or what towards moving in with Akal Purkh, if you are too sukhi and you don't even feel the need for Akal Purkh or the need for Naam or the need of that pain of separation, then that is one of the biggest problems, because you are sukhi, meaning you are an unworthy student. And if you are an unworthy student, then how can you call yourself a Sikh or a student of the Guru? Because the Guru is not willing to teach that type of student. Sukhi, vyadi, alasi, kamata, rasak bosoy. I'm just going to touch on the sukhi part. So this comes into sukh and dukh as well. The two concepts. Sukh dukh doy dar kapde. But Gurbani is still saying, Mara Sache Pacha is still telling you, "Eh donne hale kapde ya, sukh dukh hage ya, but eh dhalle donne kapde ya." And I'm going to link this back into this again. How does sukh and dukh, how do they both work as kapde? Sukh comes and it goes. Dukh comes and it goes. If you are sukhi, guaranteed there is going to be dukh. Bhai Gurdas ji elaborates on that. There's no way you can completely be sukhi forever. If you are sukhi, guaranteed there will be dukh as well. If there is happy, then there guaranteed there will be a sad. If there is cold, guaranteed at that point there will always be something hot as well. There is always going to be that. Id sare kapde hai. But je tusi is cheez nu samjh longe, sukh and dukh, doe dar kapde, they come on and they come off, they come and they go. But if you keep yourself steady within that, then there won't be any way to fall. Because then you are not going after the sukh and dukh. You've moved away from the sukh and dukh. That sukh and dukh in itself is been removed, and you've become what? Mokam. But if there is no pain of separation, if there is no pull, if there is no desire, first comes vairag, then comes prem. You cannot have prem without vairag. It's impossible. There can only be prem if there is vairag. If there is a separation, only and only then can there be a blissful meeting, a blissful merging. If you go home tonight and spill milk all over the floor, your mom is going to come, do kanate launiya. Very simple. Do kanate launiya, because you live there every day, right? Even though there is love, but maybe that child stops seeing it one day. Do you understand? Because they're together. The child stops seeing it one day. When that child has stopped seeing it now, guess what? It starts trying to move away and does not realize the value of it. Gal samjh aage? It's become blind to it now. Now what can happen? Let's say that child is now moved away, has not seen that mother for 30 years. Two things could happen. One, that child could completely forget and be like, Meri ta maa hai hi nahi si. Right? So there was no, I had no mother, I don't care, I'm living my life doing all that. Oh, sukhan de vich peh gaya. He's completely separated. Now, let's say there is vairag, there's a kitch to go and meet the mother again. That child is yearning. Maybe that mother is even calling. Maybe they're calling over the phone. But guess what the mother says? No, man, I don't want to call. You have to FaceTime me. Right? Now when they FaceTime each other, the mother is even going to say, FaceTime me, I want to meet you. Because the more they connect in that way, onni jadi khich paini hai. Does that make sense? If you completely cut off the connection, there is just filled with mal, complete mal. Mal in itself, I'm going to tell you this right now, there is grunts beyond grunts just written on the concept, what is mal? This concept of mal is just massive. And then when you go back, and once you understand that, you go back into Gurbani and you read Janam Janam ki mal gai, it's like, whoa, Maharaj, this is what you were trying to tell me this entire time. We think mal is something, oh no, it's not physical, andar di mandi mal, and we cut it off there. Right? That's not good enough. Because what is mandi mal? Chardi kive ya, uttardi kive ya. You in itself is mal. You thinking yourself that you are thinking that there is mal, that is mal. Everything is mal. Mal is maya. But it's a big concept behind that. You ever even going towards sukh or dukh, any of the sukh or dukh, that is a form of mal inside of your mind. Your mind is made up of mal. Your mind only exists because there is mal. But when you say janam janam ki mal gai, oh man, that's something else. Oh, badi vaddi cheez hai. Hai na? Gurupur hai meri rakh lai. Oh, badi vaddi cheez hai. Now here in this concept, let's go back to that sukh and dukh. That mother is there, and after 30 years they arrive at that airport. The child comes out. Guess what that mother is going through? Guess what the child is going through now? There's complete vairag, and guess what? What happens when they meet? There's a form of anand that they feel. Theek hai? Even when they call, even when they might text, even when they might think of each other, there might be a sense of what? A little bit of anand. Without vairag, there cannot be prem. The way that your mind works. If you don't feel the pain, if you don't instill that naam or that thinking of your guru or thinking of that akal purkh inside of your mind, there's absolutely no way that prem bhi paida ho sakda. And if there's no prem, then there cannot be any meeting. Does that make sense? We don't have time to go through the arth of all of Dua Prasad Swai, which we read in our Amrit Baniya. But that in itself, all the sareyan de vich pakhand da khandan kita hoya. Get it? So in that, all of it's pakhand, all jinna vi pakhand ho sakda ya, all of that, it's Maharaj just putting that down and it's exposing that pakhand or that falseness to you. The falseness in that described is basically, if you go through it, it's described in such ways that everything that you might see people doing, things that you might be actually even doing yourself on a daily basis, which you might call, this is not my Sikhi stuff, this is something else. That in itself is just considered as pakhand there as well. Because anything that is false is not true. Anything that is true cannot be false. Very simple. And if there is no prem, if there is no love, right? And there's no connecting to the truth, then ode vichon hi there is false. That is considered mal. Kahula pahan pujtero sir kahula lingare latkaho kahu vachi dasama kahu pisha ko sis navayo kahu butan ko pujata hai pas ko umrtan ko pujta ho कूर करे और जो सभी जग श्री भगवान को पेद ना पायो. So without that, वो पेद पाया ही नहीं जा सकता. You cannot even understand what that kalpurk. Without the understanding, there is no way of connecting towards that. So pakhand da khandan karna, prem vich learna. So vairag aa gaya, prem aa gaya, right? Prem to baad, this connects. We'll speak about more on this topic tomorrow because I don't want to go over time. But I'm going to tell you there's one state that is coming, which we're going to speak about, which you might have heard, which is called Sahaj Avastha. Sahaj Avastha does not mean when you fall asleep. Okay? It's very clear. Sahaj Avastha does not even mean when your thoughts stop coming in and out. Okay? Sahaj Avastha does not even mean when you are singing something with your tongue and you feel like not singing it anymore, so you just close your eyes and be like, I'm in Sahaj Avastha. That's not what Sahaj Avastha is. You might say that Sahaj Avastha based on what it comes from a certain concept. But that Sahaj Avastha, it in itself is the Sat Chit and what? Anand Swarup. ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਨੰਦ ਆ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਹਿਜ ਆ, because ਉੱਥੇ there's no moving back for that. Let's connect this back to that what we were speaking about, mokam, right? When you're complete steadfast, when there is complete detachment. Are you understanding? Complete detachment. When you're completely detached, you're not only detached from the Maya or the Tattva and East or any of these concepts or the Ishwar or any of that, you're you're even completely moved away from that pratibimb now. So you're just looking at the bimb. Does that make sense? You might be looking at the pratibimb, which is in the form of this world, but all you see is what now? The bimb. Which we speak about, Aisa mera ram rahya parpur, nikad vasai nahi har dur. Jai jai dekha teh teh tu hai, dur ka to hona jahi. Right? So speak about that. Now, ode vich, now what is the fifth name? Jidi apan gal kiti? Sahib. So Sahib hai hi ek hai. When you realize, when you begin to see that one is one, and you is you, when you see and when you experience that, now this is a completely different thing. You might have, you've all heard this Shabad, where Bhagavad Namdev ji, they say, Jab hum hote tab tu nahi, ab tu hi main nahi. Ye sare ne shabad sune aaya, theek hai? But when there is just you, jadon pratibimb rinda nahi hega, when there is no illusion, when there is no conversation even left, then only and only then can there be Sahib. And that Sahib is one. Maharaj is saying the Khalsa is the one and everything within you is one as well. I've shared this story before, I'm just going to share it now, right now as well. There was one person who was completely in love but completely in doubt. Normally I wasn't planning on sharing a Sakhi here, but I'm just going to share it anyways. Right? And I might have shared this before. There is a Gursikh at the time of Kalgidhar Pacha who is completely drenched in love, but completely drenched in param. He's completely lost within his mind. He does not, meaning, ope data hale pai nahi hone. Param halle hega ya. But he's completely in love. But within a split second, Kalgidhar Pacha removes that param as well. How does that work? Kalgidhar Pacha is there in Nanded, and they have just announced, hey Gursikho, I'm not going to take these stitches. I'm not going to take the stitches anymore. Hon mera jaan da sama ho gaya sareer kaal to. I'm about to leave now. Utthe Nandeer di dharti de uppar Maharaj ne kya, bring a tent, tambu lao, inside of that Tan Tan Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj Sache Paatshah Ji da prakash karo. Then they called jinne bhi dal sige around down the hill, around in and around, there's many different dals, regiments of the Singhs. And Kalgidhar Pacha said, bring everybody in and around. Sarya nu le aao. Everybody, as they're walking, in that moment, there was one Gursikh who was down the hill. That one Gursikh, in his mind, he heard when he got the news that Kalgidhar Pacha had now announced that the Gurgaddi is going to be given to Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj and Kalgidhar Pacha is leaving. This Gursikh could not even bear that thought. Sochya vi nahi ja sakda si. Even though sare nu pata hunda wo sama aa riya. Prem si, Vairag si, he had left everything. He had become, he was one of those Gursikhs that are known as Marjivade. The Gursikhs around the Guru, they were known as Marjivade, dead yet while alive. See, all of these concepts will make sense to you. Because what the world might call life is not what the Bhagats call life. Right? And I shared this the very first day as well. Bhagata ta sansariyan jod kade na aya. There's absolutely no way that the Bhagats and the Sansaris can go each other, because one is diluted by the Param, is inside of that doubt. They're basing their entire life out of that doubt, and one is basing their entire life out of the actual Bimb, not the Pratibimb. Even with the Bimb, the Pratibimb, they're seeing the Bimb. The reflection of the mirror is the reflection of Akal Purkh. They do not see it as a reflection of something else. So here, that Gursikh is coming, and he couldn't bear the thought. Tordya tordya, akkhan vich neer vagde hoye, crying, gathering all of his stuff on his back to walk up to the hill, go towards where Kalgidhar Pacha is. He's crying, could not even walk. Had Singhs trying to hold him up. Inna virag aa gaya. Inna prem aa gaya. Could not even live, thinking, how can I even live a day without seeing Guru Gobind Singh Ji? Othe aake, the Singhs, they're standing there, they're doing namaskar to Kalgidhar Pacha. They're matha taking. Matha tekare, just like this Singh, his turn comes in line. His turn comes in line, and when he goes, ਉਹਨੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੱਥਾ ਟੇਕਿਆ, he could not even bear, ਅੰਦਰੋਂ ਹਿਰਦਾ ਭਰ ਗਿਆ, ਅੱਖਾਂ ਵੀ ਭਰ ਗਈਆਂ, ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਆ ਗਿਆ, But even here, hale param ho gaya nahi. Meaning his param, his doubt is still not dispelled. How does Kalgitar take that away? Satguru mera vad samartha. The Guru is sitting there, takht de upar, thalle uthe baithe hoye. Gursikh comes and he could not even say what his feeling was like. He looked at the charan of Kalgitar Pacha after Mattha taking, looking at his charan, and he had this desire inside of his heart, I just want to grab the charan. Bas charan fad lama. For the last time, I don't know if I'm going to be able to grab the feet or not ever again. I just want to grab and hold on to and never let go now. Jadon unhe fade, at that moment when his hand, just like your hand goes through water, just like your hand goes through air, his hand went right through the feet of Kalgitar Pacha. And now, Kalgitar Pacha, this is just a conversation between the Gursikh and Kalgitar Pacha. All the other Singhs are busy doing their thing. The Singh is looking and he looks up, Kalgitar Pacha is laughing down. It's like he's laughing, has ke ek keh raha ke Gursikha, what do you think I am? Tu ki samjha, you thought I was a sarir? He starts saying that, try again, grab my charan. And that Gursikh goes and tries grabbing that charan again. And when he grabs that charan, his hands go again. Kalgitar Pacha is laughing. This Singh is crying now. He's like, Maharaj, I have no idea what's going on. Unhe jaake fir fadn di koshish kari, Maharaj uchi uchi hasan lag paye. Tu ki samjha param de vich pya aaya. He said, what do you think I am? You think I was a body? And he's like, I might be living in this Kal Roop, I might be leaving this body, but there's something called Mahankal as well. Mahankal is the one thing that can destroy this entire world. That Mahankal is Akal Purkh. Something Kal, time, which everything, Kal can destroy everything. Kal kills everything, kills everybody. The world is destroyed and created inside of time, but there's one thing that is beyond, that is Mahankal, the thing that kills time. And that Kalgitar Pacha is that Mahankal. That Mahankal goes and he's saying that, what do you think that I was? I've been here since the very beginning, I've been here ever since. When you connect to all of these things, fir pata lagda. Then there comes a state, prem di gall hai. Prem param si Maharaj ne dur kar ditta. Us to baad onu sahaj avastha prapat hui. Does that make sense? I'm just going to leave it there for today, but I'm not going to get too much into it. Reason being, ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਜਿੰਨੀਆਂ ਅੱਜ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਕੰਠ ਕਰ ਲਓ. ਕੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਮੈਂ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ ਫਿਰ then I'm going to be speaking about the last day stuff. And I tell you again now, consistency is the key. If you don't make your entire focus of life onto one thing, very difficult. If you just kind of think of it, then it's not good enough. If you are not willing to give up everything, Brahmpuri, Shivpuri, Ishwarpuri, if there is no Vairag, then there cannot be prem, then that goal cannot even be met. There's no meaning without the love, there is no love without the Vairag. ठीक है? So those things, मैं सारियां गल्लां सुननी आया. Then I'm going to say this again. This entire thing is just a very intro course that me and the Singhs decided that we should speak to the Sangat about, just in case somebody is actually wanting to learn. Right? Because this is the intro to Braham Vidhiya. ठीक है? Braham Vidhiya बहुत बड़ी चीज़ है. Brahm is you, Brahm is everything. Vidya is you getting rid of that ignorance and trying to go and understand that. That's what Braham Vidhiya is. It is known as one of the sanskaras as well. If you just go and focus on one thing without the actual explanation of it, if you dhyan and gyan, they both go together. Dhyan and gyan. If you don't have these two together, then you'll find that you fall into doubts as well. You have a little bit of gyan, but not complete gyan. So you get scared. Is this what it seems like, or is this not what it is? That's why Kirtan te katha, and even in the 52 Hukamname, Maharaj ne hukum katha roj katha sunda hukum ditta. Our Panth is not doing that right now. They do not do vichar of katha. They you might listen to tunes. You might sit down and eat pizza with each other that all are wearing karpans and having the stars. But if you do not do the katha vichar, then you're not going to be able to move towards that Braham Vidya. You're not completing one of the sanskars of Maharaj. Right? The 5 things that we have to go through in this life. Right? We go through Janam. We have to go through Braham Vidya sanskar. We have to go through Amrit sanskar. We have to go through Anand sanskar, meeting of Akal Purkh, merging with Akal Purkh. And then Antam sanskar ਜਦੋਂ ਸਰੀਰ ਰੂਪੀ ਦੇ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ. If you do not listen to katha, then you can fall into doubt. ठीक है रोज कथा सुननी रोज कीर्तन सुनना दैट्स अ हुक्म not from me from Kalgita Pacha I'm going to end it off there ये सारियां चीज़ां कंट करनियां and then at the end of this or after tomorrow obviously we're going to be offering to teach more of this kind of stuff in Braham Vidhiya through Granth so you can understand Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj properly understand it properly ठीक है if you are willing to this is just to show you that this stuff is there and you can help you if you we read in Gurbani all the time Tine taap nivaran hara dukhanta sukhras right but tell me what those 10 taap are taap means dukh adi byadi upadhi what are those adi byadi upadhi adi shuru aad to la ke hun tak upadhi upje hoye byadi baad vich aaye hoye so this can translate into different things adi meaning jehde man de dukh ya right byadi which is sharir de dukh and upadhi which is kudrati dukh there's different things like that aatam which is previous karmas one that are in this life and the ones that are going to come to you achanak from somebody else from an external force all this goes into depth and and when you go back and you read when we say sab dukh nivaran or tine taap nivaran hara dukhanta sukras tago begina ko lage and you understand what a true dukh is right then you'll actually understand then when you connect this to this concept when we said dukh vichhoda ek dukh bhukh ek dukh sakdwa jamdoot the very first dukh is the even vichhoda mara oh vichhode da dukh vi dur kar dinde ya not just the adi vyadi upadhi but the true dukh the dukh of all dukhs the cause of all dukhs is that avidya and jadon mara ne avidya kaddi then there is only that sahib there is only one theek hai ਇਹ ਭਰਮਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਨਿਕਲਣਾ ਹੈ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਆਸਰੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ if that makes sense. I'm going to leave this here. We'll continue it after, right? Because there's a lot of content I don't want it to go over your head because memorize it, vision it, and actually try to implement it as well. So, niya betiye parwan karniya. Sari sangat gaj waj ke Maharaj di bakshi hai fateh bulao ji. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa. Vaheguru ji ki fateh. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Please donate and help spread Guruji's message. Link is in the description below. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh. Vaheguru Vaheguru